So we officially have brand new information that we have to share in today's update. So hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So the big news to really share is that the new CPI index, or otherwise known as essentially the inflation report and information, has now officially been released for the previous month. So essentially, if you are watching this anytime during the month of June 2022 until the next inflation report comes out, it means that this video will still be very, very relevant. So in today's update, what I really want to talk about is all of the new information we officially have from the inflation report, but probably even more importantly, about the significance of this to why we actually should physically care about all this stuff, and about how this is going to impact for its stimulus checks, and then maybe also to just end this by adding a little bit of a personal insight. So even if you have seen another video about it, there's still something maybe unique to get out of this, because as many of you guys may or may not know is that long story short is that the report, it didn't come out too good. But of course, the actual specifics, we're going to explore all of that in today's video. So with that being said, let's get started. But real fast, as always, before we begin, remember to smash the like button if you guys hopefully enjoy videos like this. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Huge thanks if you guys are, welcoming back. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about, honestly, just really anything. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So to maybe start by sharing the report is that essentially is that the new inflation information just recently finally came out. As many of you guys may or may not know by now is that long story short is that it just wasn't very, very good. But now on a note is that in terms of the actual specifics is that they ended up finding out that for the last month of May 2022, so it came out June 2022, but referring to the month of May 2022, the inflation rate essentially rose by about 8.6%. So this is actually a brand new record that they've achieved, maybe not for good reasons, but nonetheless that they achieved in the last over 40 years since 1981. So that is really the wild thing, is that the last time this inflation rate was that number, there's probably many people that were not even here at that time, because of the fact that this was over 40 years ago. And it was even wilder because actually in reality, these numbers, many people already feel that they're pretty much skewed more or less, because it technically should actually be even worse. But the reason why it's a little bit skewed is really because they changed up the definition to how they define the inflation rate. But individually, when you think about the fact that it has already risen by 8.6%, if you were to factor in the actual inflation rate, many people predict that it might even be over 20%. And feel free to share any particular stories. I can even just share on a very personal level, even if you don't know what these numbers are. When I am going out in public right now and just trying to do my own daily thing, like buy grocery stores, I don't buy gas, but I've heard many stories about people that buy gas. Feel free to share what the gas situation is like, your state, and how much you've been paying and how much it's risen in your particular case. But for pretty much almost everything else, certainly food, groceries, expenses, all of that stuff, I actually feel like a lot of the prices have risen well over 20%. If anything, there's a reason why it's wild to think is that way back there was a time period when we were able to kind of regularly eat out all the time, and now we have to actually be a lot more conservative with how we spend money because of how insanely expensive everything has particularly gotten ever since the pandemic started and this entire thing really came about. The other new information that was also found is that actually they also found out that the producers, so the wholesale producers price inflation report actually came out that supposedly the inflation rate there increased by about 10.6%. So it is actually a very massive difference. Now, in terms of what is the difference between this, the wholesale inflation report, all this is that it shows the inflation rate for how much people are paying for goods and services on the business side. So what this essentially means is that if you are a business owner, they found that many businesses are now actually paying over 10% more for the expense that they need to physically run their business. So for business owners, they're paying 10% more. For us, non-business, well actually I technically am a business owner, but for non-business owners, it's now going up by about 8.6%. Now for people who are business owners that obviously have to also buy things just on their personal level, it is now going up by basically averaging around 10% on both sides now, on both ends. So this is a very, very extreme case, and this is actually pretty much what the focus of Congress and President Biden and every single person, regardless of your political party, on the right or the left side, that's basically what they're currently dealing with right now at this time. Now, in terms of what is the actual significance of why do we share all of these numbers, aside from the fact that it's actually obviously very, very insightful to know, so if you've been noticing why there's been such an increase in prices, hopefully now we at least know the answer to it. But in terms of why this is actually really related to us is because first off is that if the price of everything starts to increase on a very, very lifestyle, quality of life basis, it also means that regardless of whether we do or do not get stimulus checks, now hopefully we do, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but the big idea is that it also means that if everything starts to cost a lot more money, what we get for the money that we currently have is going to not go as far anymore because of how the fact that everything is getting so much more expensive. And it also means that even if we are actually bringing money home, whether this is through stimulus checks or through a job that we currently have, what this also means is that the money that comes into our pockets cannot really be able to buy as many things now. And especially because with so many things that are going up, even things such as like rent, for anyone that, is in New York City, which is where I currently am at, I remember I just saw a listing, I'm pretty sure, for like a apartment, in Manhattan that was basically priced at around a little bit over $3,000, and you will never guess how large this bedroom or how many bedrooms this apartment has. There was an apartment that I saw that was priced about $3,000 that had 0 bedrooms because it was literally just an open studio that people are paying more than $3,000 for in order to stay in. So it shows you is that it is getting very, very extreme. So how does this actually impact now us in terms of the stimulus check world about what this actually means is that because right now when it comes to the world of stimulus checks, people inside of Congress, they're kind of debating right now about what's the best approach to dealing with this inflation. And when it comes to stimulus checks, there are actually 2 schools of thoughts that's actually going on right now. Some of the people, for example, like Joe Manchin, are actually very, very much to this day against stimulus checks, and inflation is a very, very big reason why. Because the first school of thought really comes from the fact that there are many, many people in Congress that feel that one of the reasons we are having rising inflation right now is because of how much money we've been printing and how much money has been rotating and circling around, which means that by having more people have more money, they also will spend more money, which also means that, there's obviously more economic activity, but it also means that prices are going to go up now. So it's because of this school of thought. There are actually, sadly, as sad as it is to say, many, many people in Congress that are actually not fully in support of stimulus checks because they feel like it's going to raise the interest rate even more. Now, interestingly, on the other hand, and this is why it's not really a black and white, it's a very, very debated topic. Feel free to share your opinion. There is another school of thought now going on inside of Congress where there's actually many people that are now still very much preaching for stimulus checks. And their logic for why they're preaching for stimulus checks is because for a lot of them, they feel that because things are starting to get a lot more expensive now, they feel that it's going to make it a lot more difficult for a lot of families to be able to get through. And so it's because of that reason, there actually now is a brand new support or a rising support in order to try to do something called inflation checks. And what this essentially is that they're trying to create a system where maybe they can potentially send out stimulus checks, but to people who really, really particularly need it in order to deal with the high cost that's going on right now. So essentially is that they're going to be sending them support in order to cover up or offset the difference between what they used to pay for certain things and what they now have to pay because of how expensive things are going on. And this actually is not even necessarily just happening in terms of just regular traditional, sending out stimulus checks to people. But it's also interestingly also applying with a lot of people that are now trying to preach for inflation adjustment social programs. So what this essentially is the long story short is that many, many people that are on social programs like Social Security, unemployment, even food stamps, the amount of money you get through food stamps, all sorts of different programs, it actually gets adjusted every single year based off of the inflation rate. But there is now also another brand new push about now trying to maybe consider the fact that stimulus also happens to be a tax program in the end, and a lot of these programs are also funded by taxes, so they are very related in that sense. But there's also a lot of people that are now very, very much considering maybe to try to increase the adjustment of what the amount of money Social Security and all of these programs would normally increase by even more because of inflation. So in other words, is that maybe normally they typically adjust it by a certain percentage based off of the inflation rate. Now they want to adjust it by an even greater percent in order to accommodate all of that stuff. So in a little bit of a way, if you are on some kind of social program right now, this is actually going to potentially be relevant to you, because while it may not be a direct stimulus check per se, it is going to put more money inside of your pockets for people that are already collecting money in other means of other social programs. Now, when it comes to maybe adding a little bit more of a personal insight to about what's actually going on, in my personal opinion, I think it is very, very fair to say is that there are still a lot of people that, and I can tell you because I live in New York City, so I walk on the streets and I see it literally right on the streets outside in public. I think it is very, very fair to say is that if they were to try to maybe do not necessarily more stimulus checks, but certainly more social programs, it definitely can be a very, very massive maybe help for a lot of people right now. But I do also believe, and I think I feel it from both sides, that it is also very important that maybe we need to try to make these stimulus checks or programs a lot more targeted. So what I really do believe is maybe the best way that they can really combat this is to try to create a new social program, but to really focus that program so that the absolute people that really, really particularly need it are able to get that, but to not maybe make it as universally, not because, because we love every single person around out there, not because of the inclusivity side of it, but more because it's more to help balance it out so that the people maybe that are better off, right, that don't necessarily need stimulus checks, can at least, just get money from their regular jobs and what they're currently having. But in order to help it so that they can balance out so that the people that do need money are able to get it, but that the people that maybe, it's kind of something where it's like, they like it, but it's not absolutely necessary, can still at least help in order to kind of balance it out with inflation so it doesn't get too extreme. That hopefully tries to make a little bit of sense. The goal is really the one word, is just about balance. And I think that's the big thing that they're really, really trying to fight for right now. But of course, because we now officially just have the report, we have to see what they actually physically do with the report and where they actually go from here. But I figured at the end of the day, I think that this is probably the most important thing, to really just know about what's been happening right now. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys found that relatively insightful, maybe as always, remember to smash the like button. If you guys haven't done so, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. Feel free to share any thoughts about honestly anything, and hope to see you guys next time. Stay strong, and thank you guys so much again.